All right, let's get started. So we're going to go through the homework assignment. So problem 621, slightly modified. Let's update the numbers here. Don't worry about the test stuff. This is all not relevant. Okay, so we have a DC voltage, a DC current, no load voltage, no load current, and no load losses. We need that because we're going to get our power triangle. We have B block rotor, I block rotor, F block rotor, so those are our block rotor tests. And then we need, so if you look at the book, there was friction and windage, there was P miss and P core. You didn't have to include that, I just included it because if you look at the problem, that's included in there. It also said the core losses were 150 kilowatts in the problem. So that's the idea. I don't think we need to go through all this, unless you say we need to go through all this. But we've gone through this many, many times. But essentially, that's what we get for values. Anybody get these for R1, R2, X1, X2, and XM, or thereabouts?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously there may be some precision stuff, but okay. All right. So the first part asks slip of 2%, right? So we want to have a slip of 2%. We want to find the line current. So just like we did before. Oh, actually, do you want me to do this on the board, or do you want me to do it?
Board, please.
Board? Okay. R1. JX1, JXM, JX2, R2, R2 times 1 minus S over S. So we have all those values, right? We know the R1, the R2. We know the input voltage, if it's rated, is 480 over the square root of 3. I think that's what I specified, it's 480. And its angle is equal to 0, right? Questions so far on that? That's just laying up the circuit like we've done in the past. So at this point now, what we need to do is start calculating all this stuff for a known slip value. So for the first part, it says set your slip equal to 0.02, which means these combined is R2 over 0.02, right? So now we have that. Now we can run through our loop equations, right? Our I1 and I2 loop equations. And we can solve for I1 and I2. Do we need to write those loop equations, or they haven't changed from the previous example, exactly the same. It's just that you use different values of R1, R2, whatever. And that's what I did in MATLAB, is I made it generically. The only difference, again, is I updated this value of R2. R2 divided by the slip is your value. Nothing else changes. It's exactly the same. Okay? Once I pull that out, I have I2 and I1. The first step is find the line current. Solve for I1. Using whatever technique you want. If you want to do series parallel combinations, that's fine. I just use loop equations and solve for I1 and I2 together. And then I just pull out my value of I1 for 2% slip. Okay? The value I get is 38.5 at an angle of minus 33.79. No, yes?
I messed up something.
Am I pulling anything out sneaky? You can see that I'm saying I1 for the 2% slip is just my I2 in position 1, right? Essentially in row 1, column 1. And so I'm just displaying those values.
You got what? Sorry, I missed that. I was still trying to get the.
I got 38.5 at an angle of minus 33.7 now.
I got 40.3. But my angle was way off.
And yeah, I got.
Yeah, keep in mind, right, the motors typically are gonna run 0.9, 0.8 power factor. If the angle is like minus 70, that's probably not an actual motor that you find in the real world. So you're looking for something in the 20s or 30s, preferably.
I
Okay?
also got a different X2. Or X1, got a different X1.
What do you get for this one?
Yeah, I got like different X1 and X2, I'm not quite sure how.
What do you get for that?
I got, X2 was 1.06, X1 was 0.7.
I got that too. What did you get for your?
That's why I know it.
What? Is it 0.4 and 0.6 or is it 0.5 and 0.5?
No, it's 0.4 for X1, 0.6 for X2. But you know what? You probably forgot.
Was there a design? Oh, I guess I thought it was a different design.
See, that's another thing I didn't
Did
know.
you forget to multiply by the ratio of the frequency, which is 4?
No.
Okay. Then I don't know what to do.
I mean, none of these equations have changed. They're all exactly the same equations that we did the last class, right? So all I did was I just created this file, and this is just a duplication, all these equations. Did you divide by 3 for the power, no load, and all that stuff? Not sure, because this is the 60 divided by FBR is 4.
Probably just some sort of math error somewhere.
Okay?
Yep.
So stator power factor, all we have to do is take the cosine of the angle associated with I2. And then you just have to know that it's lagging, right? Because it's inductive. I'll also do the rotor power factor. So I'm stripping out I2, right, which is the rotor current. So that's the only thing I'm doing here. I don't actually need to do this. MATLAB is smart enough to say cosine of angle of IO2 of 2. I could do that. But what I'm trying to do is sort of make it so that you all can see he's pulling this piece out, and that's the actual I2 value. I could compress this a lot, but what I'm saying is making it a little more, you know, how you actually enter in your calculator, or if you were putting it on paper. Question?
Yeah, it's I1 is the stator one, right?
Yes.
Okay, just
Yeah,
clarifying.
I1, and it's only because of our convention for loop currents, I1, I2.
Okay.
Okay? The rotor frequency, you just multiply your electrical frequency by your slip. That's one that we may not have seen extensively in this class, but that's FR equals FE times the slip is an equation. If you look back in the slides, does that ring a bell?
I feel like you told us the equation for FR is something else. Or it might have been for like a different, I don't know, not what we're talking about right now.
Let me see if I have it on the slide. I think I do.
What's FR equals P times N over 120?
T times N over 120. That would be if it's synchronous speed, right?
Okay.
But let's look here. Probably just wait at the beginning, because that's where I start to talk about. Here. FR equals S times FE. It's also prior to that too, right? So that would be the rotor frequency. S times FE.
Did you get 1.2 hertz for that?
Let's see. Yeah. I haven't run it yet. Oops, sorry. 1.2. So the power factor for the stator is 0.83. Power factor for the rotor is 0.93, which makes sense, right? Because your stator current includes that magnetic energy that's necessary to transfer energy from rotor to stator. So once you have that sort of transformer effect already taken into account, your power factor is going to improve dramatically. Right, so you don't have to worry about that magnetizing magnetizing value that the stator has to provide. Okay, questions on that?
So the power factor of the stator is 0.83?
Yes, lagging.
And that's because you took the angle off from the current, correct? You just did the inverse cosine?
Yeah, if you did the cosine of
Yep.
minus 33.97, you should end up with 0.83. Or, it doesn't matter if it's negative or positive, you just have to know it's lagging or leading. Okay, stator copper losses, all I'm going to do is take my input current, right, which is my I1, this is my value for the 2% slip. Since it's a phase value, right, it's the individual phases have in that one, I take it here, I multiply it by my stator copper loss, which is R1, and I get 3 of those, right? Because I have 3 phases, so I have to multiply it by 3. So 3 times the absolute value of my input current, or my stator current, times that squared, times R1, multiply that by 3, gives you my stator copper loss. Right? You're literally just looking for what's the P dissipated in here, and then multiply that by 3. Yep. Air gap power. So because this was given a core one, right? The core is normally characterized here. So if you didn't do that, that's fine. You could have basically said that the power that is transferred is the input power minus stator copper losses is the one that transfers in the air gap. But if you wanted to look at the description, you'd also pull out the core losses as well, right? So, what did I do? Well, the first thing I did is I took my input power, I have my phase voltage, and my current, right? And I just did the conjugate of that, because this is S, isn't it? 3 times VP conjugate of I is 3 times VI conjugate, which is S, isn't it? Yeah. I know this voltage here. I know this current. So S equals VI conjugate. This is for single phase.
You put a 3 in front, make the 3 phase.
Put a 3 in front, it's the 3 phase.
Okay.
That is equal to P plus JQ, right? So if I take the real part of this,
Which is P.
I get P.
Okay. So what do you do with that? So what's P? Is that your cop? No.
That's PN.
P in, this is P in. This is
Okay.
all the power into the motor. So I've got my input power, and actually, I don't actually have it, right? I just subtracted core. I also have to subtract stator copper losses, right? So, that's my input power, my air gap power. So let's run it here. Maybe I'll remember to hit it twice. So my stator copper loss is 1 kilowatt. My power that crosses across the air gap is 26.5 kilowatts. Does anybody else get that?
I'm so long.
You're so lost?
No, all.
Oh, okay. Are we following to this point?
Where did we get P for? Was that from the book?
That was in the book, yes. But like I said, if you didn't, because I didn't give it to you, if you didn't want to take it from the book, you didn't have to. But just in terms of explanation, remember that air gap power, this is the rotating world, right? This is the defining line between the stator and the rotor. So that's the power, the real power that moves through the air gap. This real power moving through the air gap. And that's demonstrated here. So I have to take this input power minus this power loss minus this power loss. And that gives me power across the air gap. Okay? To get converted power, there's a couple ways to do it. You could have just taken this right here, right? And did I squared times that, times 3, which would be fine. But also, I also take this, right? And the reason why you really can't do the I squared R is because you don't know what this value is here, right? If we had a way of including this R core, because we include 150 watts, what is that value here? We don't know what that is, right? So we really can't say, is this I2 times this value? Because we don't know what this is. If you neglected it, then it would be the exact same result. But since we have core losses, we took it out, we take our air gap power, we subtract I squared R losses here, and then this is the power that is converted. The power that goes through this resistor, which would be I2 squared times this value times 3, if we know the exact value of core losses, or core resistance.
Wait, so what does that equal to then?
What is what equal to?
Just P converted equals,
It's going to be your air gap power minus P rotor copper losses. So that's one of the problems it asks you to do, right? It asks you to actually calculate what or draw the power losses. So we can draw our arrows here, starting in. Here's P in. The first thing that goes is P stator copper loss, right? So we lose a chunk there. Then we continue on. Now it's P core is what we lose. Now we have a power here. This is my air gap power, isn't it? That's the power that we're talking about. My next step is to take out my rotor copper loss. At this point, this is P converted, right? Now I have 2 more. I think in this problem there's 2 more. There's P friction and windage, and P miss or stray, depends on who you ask. And this is P out, which is equal to the torque times omega, the actual speed.
so you said P RCL is just 3 times I2 squared R2?
Yep, just make sure it's the absolute value, right?
Okay.
Because it's a real number. Got typos on a tour. So here's my converted power, right? Taking that rotor copper loss out. Now I actually have induced torque. So that's going to be my P converted divided by my mechanical speed. Then I got to subtract to actually get my output power. I've got to take out all these powers. I take out my friction and windage and my miscellaneous, and now all that power is actually shaft power ready to rotate a load, just as I show on that diagram at the bottom. My efficiency is just P out over P in at 2% slips. So let's run it to this point. So my converted power is 25.9 kilowatts. My induced torque is 140.4. My actual, I guess it's updated. My torque, actually it's T out at 2% slip, is 137.46. And my efficiency is 95%. So pretty darn efficient, right? So this may or may not be operating at full load output. We would have to check that. So the motor load, the motor speed in RPM and radians per second. So this is what it is. Yes, sir?
What was for the induced torque, what speed is it over?
Mega Sedan.
So, okay.
It just depends which power you use, right? If you use air gap power, it'd be a Mega Sedan. If you're taking all the losses out, it'd be a Mega Sedan. You can use either one, you just have to make sure you have the right equation. Now I have rotational, RPM, and synchronous speed, which mechanical speed, which I've already defined previously to give me the actual, help with some of the calculations. And let's go to here. So it spins at 1764 RPM or 184.7 radians per second. And the last thing I said, from the problem description, is what is the starting code of the motor? So now, how do we figure out start code for the motor? What do we do?
That like from the information given.
Just keep talking, what do you mean?
Um,
The chart? I haven't given you the code yet, have I?
Yes.
Oh, well,
Yeah, but how do you find the code?
To figure out which one it is.
Yeah, which code letter is it?
Paul, can we just backtrack a little bit?
Sure.
We have a question.
No, I was just asking if that was to get the motor speed, NS. Okay, I couldn't.
I'm sorry?
Is that NS times 1 minus 0.02 to get the motor speed? No.
That's that's an RPM, yep. So it's slip, 1 minus the slip times the synchronous speed. So how do we solve for the KVA code? What does the starting KVA code mean? When you first energize the motor, how much
Power is it drawing?
current it draws, and then you have a ratio, right? You gotta do the KVA code calculation.
Which is like what KVA over?
KVA per horsepower, how many KVA per horsepower do you need? So, what am I doing here, this first line, R2 starts?
the value of R2 at the beginning.
Yeah, when it first starts, what's my slip? Slip is 1, right? So this is just equal to R2 when it first starts up. So you redo all your work with S equal to 1. Then you solve for your currents again. You pull out your input value. And I actually showed you the ratio, but that doesn't super duper help me. So let's run it. So it tells me it draws 2.736 times, but that's not really helpful. What is helpful?
I don't know, what even is that?
Pardon?
What is 2 point, what does that number represent?
It's the ratio between the input current at starting versus the input at 2% slip, which we'll assume is the full load value.
So I start as 2.64 times the amount of full load.
Full load current, right. So what you would do, what I would say is, the output is how much? It's 10 horsepower, right?
Times 746.
But we don't need to do that because it's KVA per horsepower. So what we need to do is find the KVA for a 10 horsepower motor, right? So how do we solve for the KVA of this motor?
Isn't it just 480 divided by 33 times the current that you calculated?
Yeah, the starting current. And the starting current here is, what do they call it?
Oh.
I in start. What is it?
You just called it I start.
I think it's I, you put I and sit in.
Oh, I missed an I, thank you. So 105.33. Question, Joe, or are you stretching?
Stretching. Sorry.
It's okay. So this is 105. So if I take this and multiply that, what do you get? 3 times 277 times 105.
76.
87.57 kVA. So if I take that and divide that by 10, which is the horsepower rating, that tells me it's 8.75 kVA per horsepower. So if I look at my code, oops. 8.75 tells me it's code letter K, right? Does everybody understand what I just did? All I did was calculate the kVA for starting, assuming this is a 10 horsepower motor. And I could have been a little more accurate. I could have actually calculated I2 and converted that to horsepower and did it that way. You all want to do that? Need more practice?
Yes.
And then IN start is basically I1 of our, like the first loop equation. we
Yes, IN start is IN, yeah, for the starting value. Joe?
So I have a question, and hopefully I'm not beating a dead horse, but for your KVA, you have 480 divided by the square root of 3, and then you have that multiplied by 3.
Yep.
So the 277, that's your voltage for one phase?
Yes. It's a Y-connected motor, isn't it?
Okay. So you wouldn't multiply it by 3 if it was delta, or?
No, because this current we'd be calculating here would be a phase current too, right?
Okay.
So usually you just multiply the single phase by the single phase, and you always multiply by 3. So if it's delta, this voltage here would be 480, that'd be a phase voltage, but the current would be 105. You'd actually have to divide the current going into the motor by the square root of 3 to get the actual current going through the phase.
Okay.
So that's what I'm saying, it doesn't matter, it always works out. As long as these are both phase quantities, it doesn't matter.
Wait, so which current is that?
This current here, that's the starting current.
Okay, that you calculated?
Yep.
Okay.
So that KV, so it doesn't matter if it's a delta or Y, you just always set it up like that then?
It's either gonna be, if you're gonna use a line voltage,
Yeah.
right? So it just depends, right? This is a V phase, I phase. If it's V line and I line, use the square root of 3.
Okay.
It always works out that way. Do you want to see what the actual machine is putting out at that value? Or how, actually, this is a good question. How would you do that?
What, the service factor?
The service factor is just kind of a generic question. I don't think that was a MATLAB question that we can answer, but we can answer that now. I was talking more about what's the actual output of this motor.
And like what, like watts?
There's P out, right? So this is putting out 34 horsepower, right? Not 10. So to actually be correct, we should be dividing. Let's see. So I need this. ABS of IN underscore start times 3 times B phase. That's my power, right?
We have to put that I.
Oh, yes, thank you. That's my S. Now I'm going to divide that by P out. This is the actual. Does everybody understand what I'm doing here? I'm doing the actual output, not just what I'm assuming is the nameplate. So now it's 2.57 kVA per horsepower. If I do that, now I'm in the NEMA code letter K, or A, sorry.
So that's like really different.
It is, because we said it was 10 horsepower, but when we actually checked it out, it's 35 horsepower. But that's okay, because remember we just made up a bunch of numbers for the test? We just kind of randomly came up with numbers to see what it would look like, so I I said, you know, I think the example had 10 horsepower, but we just literally on the fly came up with numbers, so there was no guarantee it was gonna be 10 horsepower.
We
Question?
don't even need that 10 horsepower till this part.
To the end, yeah, because that's what the nameplate is, that doesn't actually mean what the motor is operating at. So nameplate is a dangerous thing. Don't use the nameplate other than for the voltage and the frequency. It doesn't mean anything, it's just what it's designed to operate at, that's full load. So is this a helpful example to do over?
Yeah.
The ending, like the last few questions were a little bit confusing.
Yeah, well, we have to know that stuff for like an exam or something.
Yes.
Like the power flow diagram and like the starting code stuff and the except.
Well, not the starting code, not specifically, because I have to give you the table, you don't have to memorize that.
Okay.
But understanding, hey, what is a starting code? Well, that just tells you how many, if I give you a starting code of 10, it's a 5 horsepower motor, you should be able to calculate what the current will be if it's a 40 volt machine, right?
Can we have more examples / homework like this?
Another one?
I don't want Michelle or Kraus here to argue with me.
Do you want another example?
Maybe not one as extensive.
Yeah, not as long.
Maybe
But this is-
like
this is
specific
the whole-
little bits.
Like on the exam, you would, this is like something similar, you'd be like.
Yeah.
This would be something similar like you do on an exam.
Like the exactly like the one we did for homework over the weekend.
Well, not exactly,
Like,
but
similar,
similar.
like different numbers, but like asking the same exact questions or something?
No, I just said it's not the same exact, it's similar.
Okay.
But so we'll have to find like these values and then like answer questions, okay? So can we, yeah, I'd be down for another like example that's like similar, but just like not a ton of parts.
Not a ton of parts. I guess I don't know what,
Not
Probably, like-
not A through O, like just A through like F or something, I don't know. Like regular.
Or
not
the
parts.
same thing, but maybe we don't do the equivalent circuit for as much.
well, do you want to redo your homework assignment?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Because I royally.
yeah,
I saw.
yeah.
If you don't want to hand it in, you can redo the assignment. You don't have to redo, well, I gave you the values, right? So I'll put those up if you want, you can hand those back in. I'm happy to give you lots and lots of homework if you like. I have no problem with that.
Oh, sorry.
All right, so you want to write down your values for R?
Just show it.
So you don't have to calculate those, just use the values I provided. So you feel pretty comfortable being able to do these tests, right? You don't need to do that again?
Yeah.
Or do you want to make up another set?
No.
No, I think, yeah, it's just the most confusing, the most confusing thing was just knowing, like, which information to use and, like, which values to use.
Right, because like with all these different values that we're trying to find, there's 2 or 3 equations you could use. And that's like really confusing us.
What do you mean for the, like the open and short circuit test?
No, for like, no, P conversion.
Yeah, like, just the ways to get things, if you, like, do something in a different order, you can, like, find different stuff at different times.
Yes, yeah, if you have I1 and I2, you can, except this problem, remember we had P core, so you get to be pretty limited in terms of being able to use I squared Rs on the rotor side, because this I2 is not valid, right? It's close, and so we're saying, hey, look, this is gonna be approximately the rotor copper loss, but it's not correct, because this R core value is gonna change the value of I2, isn't it? It's gonna give me slightly different values. That make sense?
Yeah.
But all the approaches are the same. So, you want to just rinse and repeat the problem,
Yeah.
and then with these values, will that be helpful?
Yeah.
Okay. But all the values you're using is just, what is my torque? Well, the torque is from here. Or, the torque is start taking the losses out, right? And then figure out what it's gonna provide for a value of torque. Yes, sir?
All right, before we move on to something else, can you go back over your X1 and X2, please? Because,
X1, X2 is 0.4 and 0.6.
right,
Yeah, I
like,
got
so,
different numbers.
yeah, same,
I got .71 and 1.06. Yep.
agreed.
I'll show you the calculations.
Because you use your locked rotor test, and then you take the imaginary part from that answer, and that's your XLR, right?
Yep.
And then you just take that XLR.
Right here, right? Here's my block rotor result. I solve for theta, I've got a P. I solve for theta.
Do you have values for those?
Sometimes I can cover, let's see.
Because I got 0.443 times 4 to get your 1.772.
So the other way,
Yeah, I don't know.
MATLAB has it, oops. You can also leave the workspace variables up, and those are the variables here. P in lock rotor is 333. This is single phase, right? Is that what you're asking?
Like when we get our lock rotor, like when we do, because we do we get in rectangular format, and we take the imaginary part, and that equals XLR. Just everybody seems to be the same, and it's just not matching what you have. I guess it's just
Right there.
Do you, like, what do you, is there a way you get a value, like, exactly for that?
ILR?
Yeah.
Sure. It's right here.
Wait a minute, so the ILR?
Oh, so IL, that's I locked rotor. Yes, so that's I locked rotor. It's 14.4 minus J 26.3.
So that's the current that you gave up. Oh,
Wait, what is that?
That's I locked rotor.
The current of the lock rotor?
Yep.
okay. That's weird because you gave us 30 amps for the lock rotor test.
Oh, that's probably what it is, because yeah.
Well, let's see. Where do I define IMAG locked rotor?
IVR equals 30.
IBR is 30. Yeah, it's right here. Why do you think it's wrong? This is in rectangular coordinates. It's not in polar. Right? It's 14 minus J 26.3. It's not 14 at an angle of 26.3. If you don't like that, you can do the abs of I locked rotor, angle of I locked rotor times 180 over pi. Isn't that what you need to do?
What's the angle?
Minus 61.
I got 50.1.
Same. Because for the phase angle for the locked rotor, it should be your 1 kilowatt divided by 3 times 30 divided by the square root of 3 times 30. And then you take the inverse cosine of all that, and that gives you 50.1 degrees. And then when you're trying to find the impedance of your locked rotor, it should be 17.32, which is again 30 divided by the square root of 3 at an angle of 0. You divide that by your locked rotor current, which is 30 amps.
Was this 30 or 40 feet locked rotor?
30.
Maybe that's why. Oh, let's quick plug in here all.
Yeah, that's exactly what I got.
Okay, so I had a 40 instead of 30.
There we go.
Feeling pretty good?
Yeah, just.
See, that's why I don't like
MATLAB.
MATLAB.
Back through, and I was like, I had no idea what I missed.
Hey Paul, this is why I don't like MATLAB.
Why?
Because
I had
if you
one
get stupid
typo.
mistakes like that, and then if I make a mistake, at least I can see it written down. Like, oh, I messed up because I used this number.
Okay.
Well,
Instead of having
what I assumed is it was a calculation, because you all were saying, we all got the same number, and I said, okay, I must have entered in a data point wrong, and then you guys said 30, you said 30 times 30,
Yeah.
so that's when I looked. But if you make a mistake on your block rotor voltage, let's redo the problem, if you have the wrong voltage, see what comes faster. You wanna try? I just did that, it was what, 5 seconds?
Yeah, but how long did it take you to figure out that that was the problem?
Well, once he told me once you said this was the same as this, I said, okay, maybe there's a data that's entered incorrectly. Because I knew, we've gone through this so many times, there was nothing wrong here, because we've done that 10 times. I didn't change any of that, that's just a copy from the previous, so I knew that those equations were right, I didn't even need to check those. Aaron, you have a question?
Yeah, can we look at your results, because I think some of the numbers have changed. Thanks.
Which,
Well, you get to redo them, right?
Yeah, but I just wanna, we'll see.
Would you get for the starting curve, was it 105, or is it more, it's more now?
It probably changed a little bit, because the value, one of the values had changed.
So
So,
you had 105, I think, I'm just curious.
So, Paul, I was looking online about the rotor power factor, and there's like two options it says. You could take the angle from like I2, or you could solve for the theta of the rotor impedance, and then, have you ever heard of that?
yep,
Okay, so it
It's-
gives a different answer, so I didn't know which one.
it's gonna give a slightly different answer because the angle, so when I said the power factor, the angle associated with the rotor current is not, the voltage there is not the same as 0.
Okay.
So it's actually more correct to say the way that you're doing it, but this is a way more simple approach to do it.
Okay.
But you're right, it would be, to be exactly 100% precise, it would be that way. Or I could also solve for the voltage across the circuit and do it that way, but it's gonna be close enough and I don't wanna confuse people.
All right.
So I'm trying to keep it simple. Anything
Can
else?
you just scroll down to that? I was just curious if that's where I got to restart.
Well, I gotta do this, I gotta say,
Oh, I thought it was still in there from before.
it will be.
So what did
Okay.
everyone get for the power factor of the rotor?
So you got it all right, so that means I should give you
Yeah, at least that
problem?
far. No, that far. I don't think I did the like the stack.
That's okay, we can give you a completely new problem if that would be helpful.
Did anyone else get 0.988 for the rotor power factor?
Yes.
0.988.
Yeah.
I got 0.97, but it's.
I got 0.97.
Yes.
It depends which way you.
Which way you did it?
I did it the cosine of the.
You can see that they're not that far off, but it's technically more right to say it's actually, if you really wanted to do it, that's the R2. So you take the inverse, the cosine of the inverse tangent of x, is it capital X or lowercase x? Capital X2 divided by R2 wrong button. Is that what you got? This is the exact way to do it.
It's funny just changing that 40 to a 30, like I now I'm not. Because I saw the
Change the
numbers
results.
before and I was like, definitely did something wrong, but now they're all kind of similar.
Okay?
And then, so P converted, I guess I had mixed up because I wrote down from last class that it was just, all for P convert, or, yeah, it was just 3I2 squared R2 times the 1 minus S over S, but I guess it's.
Well, that technically would be the right.
Okay.
But again, we're not including the core losses there,
Right,
right?
that problem,
Right.
because the problem before we didn't have that, so that's why.
That's right, yes.
Okay, gotcha.
If you knew what the our core was, then that would be correct, but we don't know what the R
Because
core is.
technically it was 0 because there wasn't any.
Or infinite, basically,
Okay,
R2 is
gotcha.
infinite, it's an
Gotcha.
open circuit.
Okay, so,
Good?
and then,
Helpful, not helpful?
and then I guess, I don't know if I'm messing this up, omega sub S is gonna be our synchronous speed, which would be
It's
1800.
377 divided by 2. Omega sub S. N sub S is 18.
Oh, okay, so that's right. So when 377 divided, is that just, constant, or is that?
377 is what it would be for a 2-volt machine.
Well, it's like.
It's 60 hertz,
Always.
it never changes.
Oh, okay, so.
Basically, whenever we're
Wait, what
dealing
was that,
with
Sebastian?
only chains, it's
And so
Pardon?
that's.
What's that, Sebastian?
That's the rotational speed in RPM. So for a 4-pole machine to be 80 RPM.
Okay.
You said 377 divided by 2?
370 because it's a 4-pole machine, right?
Okay, so-
So you have 2 pole pairs.
And that's,
All right, so let's finish up this chapter. And so on Thursday, we'll do a review, because the test is on Monday, right?
Yeah.
Same as it was, no card.
Yeah, one exam, put down the lab.
Why?
So test next Monday, right? Can you say that?
Do you know what room it'll be in?
I don't, I'll find a room.
I'm just curious, but why do you have us do a note card rather than just a piece of paper for a cheat sheet?
Partly because what happens when you do a note card, you understand the material better and better. If you do a cheat sheet, full 8.5 by 11, what is your tendency to do?
But, well, I don't know, I feel like the only difference for, like, when I make my note card, I just write out a sheet of notes on a piece of paper and then just write it smaller to fit on a note card.
Most people, though, if they had a full sheet of paper, they would write it small, and then they would start just putting examples down to see what example is the closest to the board, to the example in the test. So you don't understand the material, you're just sort of regurgitating the example. So it's a way of making sure that you don't put examples on there, because you have very limited space.
How come you don't let us use the FE manual?
You could, do you want to use the FE manual? It's not going to help. The FE manual has nothing about 3-phase motors. I mean, it might have a power triangle, but, I mean, would you rather do the FE manual? If you want, that's fine. It's just, it's this, you'd use a thimble out of the FE manual, so I'd rather just have you use a note card. The FE manual in the controls class, there's a lot of stuff in there that would be helpful if you know how to use it, but in this class, there's, you know, nickels and dimes worth. It's really not that useful. But I'm happy if you want to use the FE review manual. Who votes for FE review manual? Whose vote counts?
I'm just asking why, and now I know why. My answer, my question is answered, so I'm fine.
I could try that. You want to do a pilot?
No.
It's not.
But does that answer your question, Kyle? It really is. People, you'll be amazed. I've literally seen in the past, people would just take my slides and then minimize them and have like 80 slides on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper.
Yeah, but aren't your tests like not directly like the same as examples that we do?
No, they aren't exactly, but if I could use the fact that you aren't going to just copy an example, like a homework example, and then just bring it to the class, then I can actually test your understanding of material by putting an example that's kind of close to the homework. As opposed to if I let you bring in whatever you want, I really have to come up with completely new examples that you don't necessarily, that you haven't seen, to see if you can apply the material.
Isn't that what you do?
Is that what you think? Wasn't the last test, everybody said almost exactly like the homework?
Well, the last test was good, but for the first one, I don't know.
I thought the first test was a mix.
Depends on what your homework was that you studied.
Yep. All right. Here's a contactor, here's the lines, here's the motor, these are the terminals of the motor. This is how you start a motor across the line. These contactors will close, boom, 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 hopefully at the same time, so you have a balanced load. The motor starts to spin. The voltage here can drop pretty substantially because of that starting inrush current. You get dim lights. You can actually get flicker. So flicker is if you've ever been at home and your lights seem to dim a little bit and then they come back on. That's a voltage regulator on the line usually kicking up and down. And so if it does it a lot, it's annoying, right? That's called flicker. And if it gets too much, you actually call the cable company. So this dimming of lights, it's okay for an industrial facility to a certain extent. But what happens if you trip computers offline, right? What if the voltage that the circuit's connected to is so low that it drops out computers? Or if the contactors themselves. So, let's put an auto transformer in there. An auto transformer is basically a transformer whose primary and secondary are sort of coupled together, right? There are two separate windings here. Here is the primary winding, and the secondary winding, you're scaling it up. So what they do is they have, the current is essentially in common, right? So you get the full voltage here, and then you steal off where you want to go to the motor. That's called auto transformer. You're giving it lower than rated voltage. How it works, the start is the S and the R is the run. You hit the start button, close, 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 close. That's it. The R's are all open. So what happens is it energizes the auto transformer, energizes, energizes. What's happening over here with these two S contacts? They're closed, but why is that? Is it necessary? Why are they there?
So they're all the same.
All the same, what was the other thing I heard?
Emergency shuttle.
Nope, it's Y connected, right? If you didn't have these here, they'd just be hanging in the air, aren't they? So this is a Y connected transformer configuration. So this connect provides a path for reference. So you steal off here, you start the motor at a way lower voltage. Once you get to a certain speed, these will open and the R's will kick in. So now you're running at full voltage. This is the most common way of starting a motor without having a big expensive. You just need a small auto transformer. Yes, sir.
Can you explain the secondary part of the auto transformer? Because I was not understanding how you were explaining.
Yep, we can redraw it this way. So, a regular transformer works like, and we don't cover auto transformers a lot in this class because it's pretty uncommon that you'll come across one in industry. It's not unheard of, you do see them, but they're not nearly as common as a regular old transformer. So here's a regular old transformer, right? Primary and secondary. What if I did that? Take the primary and secondary, rotate them together, and now I have my, instead of pulling it off this way, I put my B primary over here, and this is my B secondary. So I can step the voltage up or down very easily by using this. And so how do I step the voltage up? I actually use the opposite dot convention, right? So you put the dots. So basically it's just how you add or subtract magnetic fields. Auto transformers, that's basically what they do. They increase or decrease the voltage. Sometimes I've seen them go 345 to 115 kV. So they're really good for just doing voltages, and they're really small as compared to, like here, to move a lot of power, has to be much, much greater than this one. But since this winding is common, you don't have to send all the power through that winding. You can share some of it. So that's how an auto transformer works. You literally just share the two. So you don't have electrical isolation here, right?
So the primary is both windings. Is that what you're saying?
Yep. Or you can do it the other way. You could use it as a step up or down. You can configure it either way. Okay? It's really just adding. So like here, this is 4160 to 480, right? What if I took them and set them that way with a dot convention? Instead I get plus minus, I can increase or decrease the voltage, can't I? That's all it is. They're just connected essentially in series. And then you boost or buck the voltage that way. That's how
And then it still is a matter of the number of windings, essentially.
the turns of the winding, yep. So again, the only time you see auto transformers, so they are also sometimes called voltage regulation. So if you work at a substation, sometimes there's an auto transformer or a voltage regulator that literally is just doing this slight adjusting here, and it's all in series with the line to help increase or decrease the voltage a little bit. That's a voltage regulator. You usually see those at some, well, you usually, oftentimes you'll see them at the substation, or you'll also see them out on the field, like way out on a line, or you may see one or two in a switchyard. They're not that common. You'd never see one for a business or a home, because you don't have electrical isolation. Remember the advantage? If I have a fault from here to here, no big deal, right? There's no path of return. So anything can happen on either side, and you're not passing 4160 onto the secondary side and blowing somebody's house up. Over here, if you have a fault inside these windings, I can be pulling 345 kV to the secondary side. So that's why you usually don't have big changes in voltages. So if I'm going from 4160 to 480 here, all this equipment on the secondary side has to be able to handle 4160 volts, because anytime there's going to be a failure, which is bound to happen, you're going to destroy any of that secondary equipment. So that's why the biggest ones I've seen, 345 to 115 is the max I've ever seen in terms of ratio differences, it's 3. Whereas a regular transformer, I mean, you go down the street, you see 7200 to 240 all day, every day. Generators at Main Independence Station, it's 13.8 to 115 kV, I think it's either 115 or 138, so, you know, that's pretty standard, go much higher. We already talked about this, so I don't go through that again. So it shows you sort of before and after, right? It starts, all the S's are closed. When it's running, all the R's are closed. This is a very efficient, very economical way to start. And you don't want to be expensive, because this thing, right, if it uses power when the thing is always running, can cost you a lot of money. So this is a preferred way over a variable frequency drive, because variable frequency drive is always on, it's always using power. The advantage of a variable frequency drive is you can precisely control the amount of torque output, but sometimes why do you care? If you're just pumping water from point A to point B and you don't care how much water is flowing, then you would just use an auto transformer. It's much, much cheaper. Here's an example, 100 horsepower, 460 volt, blah, blah, blah motor. We're going to run it at a 65% tap. We want to figure out what the lock rotor value is going to be. If it's started across the line, then we're going to start it at 65% and then compare inrush current versus the full voltage and the 65%. Yes, sir?
What is the 65% tap?
So auto transformers, right? We can tap it. We can set it at 80%, 65%. Normally when you buy an auto transformer, you have multiple tap positions. And you can say, I want it to start at 80% or 65% or 50%. You just move the tap position. And the reason why you do that is it depends on how much of a voltage hit your system can take and how long you're going to allow the motor to get up to speed, because a lower voltage means it can't put out as much torque. It takes longer to get up to speed.
So does that change like the voltage that it's putting out, or?
What's putting out?
Tap, like-
Yes. Yeah. So 65% would be 65% of nominal voltage. 80% would be 80% of nominal voltage. So power equals torque, right? Divided by omega. So this is 52 because we're trying to do things in foot-pounds, and this is horsepower, so this is in the beginning of the book. Your rated torque is 690.45. We'll say our lock rotor torque is about 125% based on this design, so we can put out 863 foot-pounds of torque at full voltage. So for letter H, we need about 6.7 kVA, because it's right in the middle. So we need 1,261 amps of inrush current to take this motor or get this particular motor started. All right? Now if we run it at 65%, instead of 460, now we're at 299. And it's approximate, right? That is because it's proportional to the voltage. The current is going to be proportional. So instead of 1261, you actually have 820 amps of starting current. The reduction is by the square. So you remember way back in the beginning, it was proportional to the square of the voltage. So we square it. We have 365 foot-pounds of torque. Now you can see why it starts a lot slower, right? You have more torque available, you can get a certain shaft up and spinning at a much faster rate than this. So if you're going to auto transformer start, you better allow that. And again, that's why you're tapped. Look how much of a reduction. That's almost 500 foot-pounds of torque reduction for starting. Where if you had 80%, it would be 0.65 times, 0.8 squared times this value. So you'd be at 64% as opposed to, whatever that ends up being squared, 0.4% or so. And this sheets show the curves, and this is an interesting set of curves because this actually shows what it should be if it starts across the line. Then this actually shows what happens when it starts at a reduced voltage. So you can see the current is way down, so gimping along. What happens right here? A little bump.
When it like reaches the speed.
Yeah, this is the run speed. This is when the motor is running at a speed where you feel like you can switch over to the run mode and take that auto transformer out. So you switch to run, it jumps back up, right? So it puts out more torque, and then it continues on to the normal torque versus speed characteristic. So this is just showing you the reduction, that's all. So this shows you the shaft speed, and it transitions at a slip of about 12.5%. I don't know if that's adjustable or not, that may be adjustable. And here is the torque output. So you can see what the torque is at 299 versus 460. My transition, so I jump back up. It shows us jumping instantaneously, which we know we can't get to jump instantaneously. So it probably would do more like this, and then it continues down until you reach your full load value. That's it. Questions on chapter 6? Yes, sir.
What's gonna be on the exam next week?
Chapter 6.
Just chapter six?
Chapter 6.
It's chapter 6. Well, keep in mind, everything we learned in chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4, which was synchronous speed, right, is applicable, because we need that to understand motors. But it's specifically going to focus on chapter 6. So that means your assignment, your next assignment is due, be a week from today. So you have an assignment due Thursday, and then one due the following Tuesday.
Wait, what?
After the exam?
Oh, after the exam, yeah, that's right. So do you want to have it due next Thursday?
Wait,
Let's go
which
Thursday.
assignment did you say?
It's assignment number 6, right?
Yeah.
One is the number hour a day.
Five.
Is it 5?
What it's listed as.
Assignment 5. So you have assignment 5 due on Tuesday.
Wait, on Tuesday right after the test?
Sorry, this Thursday.
Thursday.
Plus the rework for this homework assignment that was due today, Thursday.
Okay.
You sure?
Well, it's all done, right? This assignment, you already have the answers, it's gonna take you 2 minutes. And then the other one, you've been working on the whole time, right?
I didn't even realize it was a homework assignment.
It's been posted for 3 weeks. Kyle's laughing, he's like, sure, what did you say?
It's okay, Kyle, I'm in the same boat.
Well, when else would it be due? I won't be able to go over it, so,
Yeah.
because we have the test on Monday, unless you have to do the test, so we could we can do this. Well, I don't know if you'd rather do this. We'd have a test during class, but then we're pinch for time that way, so.
Yeah, no, we can do this as Monday.
So-
That's fine.
Do it Thursday, and then we can do a review for Thursday, or whatever questions you have.
Yeah, and like go through this and the homework and then.
Yep, whatever questions you have. What's that, Mike?
Matt Lab one.
If we have questions from the homework, it's easier.
Okay. Yep.
Wait, what day is it? Is it Tuesday?
It's Tuesday.
Alright, so wait, so Thursday we're having a review for the test. Okay.
Yeah, because Monday, we have a test.
Yeah.
Hopefully you knew, because we talked about the test being on Monday for quite a while, and that's not my choice. That's, next week is the week to have tests.
And the week after Monday, we're going for that.
I'm gonna try, they still haven't said yes that we can go, but I'm gonna try to go.
What is it? Which-
AC Electric, where's Bangor?
Oh.
We can't have exams during the week before finals.
There's been another shutdowns.
That's when they do a lot of work, yeah.
Spring, yeah.
Yep. All right, I'll let you go a few minutes early. Have a great day.
Thank you as well, Paul.
Thank you.